stop scrolling. Something ancient has just shifted in the heavenly realm, and your spirit knows it. You didn't find this message by accident. You were drawn here, pulled by an invisible hand that's been guiding your steps through the darkest valleys, the longest silences, the nights when you wondered if God had forgotten your name. But He hasn't forgotten. In fact, at this very moment, as you're hearing these words, there's a scroll being unrolled in the courts of heaven, a final book, one that's been sealed since before time began. And the names written inside, they're not written in ink, they're written in fire. What if I told you that everything they said about your struggles was preparation? What if every door that slammed shut, every person who walked away, every season you felt invisible, was actually heaven's protection over something too precious, too powerful to be exposed before its time? You've sensed it, haven't you? That restlessness in your bones, that knowing deep in your spirit that you were meant for more than what this world could see. They called you too sensitive, too intense, too much. But what they couldn't understand is that you were never meant to fit into their small boxes. You were sealed, marked, set apart. And now, in this hour, when darkness thinks it has won, when the enemy thought he had silenced the last of the faithful, something is happening that's making hell itself tremble. The final book is opening. The sealed names are being summoned. And if you're still breathing, if you're still believing, if something in your chest is pounding right now as you hear these words, your name might be in that book. Before we dive deeper into this mystery, I want to pause and say thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, if you feel led to plant a seed in faith, we welcome that partnership in spreading hope. But right now, something is stirring in the spirit realm. The veil is thinning, and what I'm about to share with you, it's going to challenge everything you thought you knew about your purpose, your pain, and your calling. Because the truth is, chosen one, you were never supposed to be comfortable in this world. You were born for the final hour, and what happened next made the darkness tremble. They thought silence would break you. It made you stronger. Listen to me, chosen one. What you're about to hear is not another spiritual pep talk. This is not motivational speaking wrapped in holy language. This is a divine interruption of your timeline. Right now, as you sit in whatever room you're in, feeling whatever weight you're carrying, heaven has pressed pause on the entire cosmos just to get this message to you. There's a scroll, not made of paper, not written by human hands. This scroll was authored before the first star learned to shine, before the oceans knew their boundaries, before your grandmother's grandmother ever whispered a prayer into the darkness. And tonight, for the first time in millennia, it's being opened. Your name isn't being added to it. Your name was always there. They tried to erase what heaven had already written in stone. You know that feeling you've carried your whole life? That restlessness in your bones when everyone else seemed content? That's not anxiety, my friend. That's recognition. Your spirit has been hearing its own name called from eternity, echoing through time, waiting for this moment when the scroll would finally be unrolled and read aloud in the courts of glory. They told you that you were too sensitive, too intense, too much for this world. But what they couldn't see is that you were never meant to fit into their small boxes because you were designed for a cosmic assignment. You didn't come here to blend in, you came here to break through. Every door that slammed in your face, that was heaven protecting you from settling for less than your destiny. Every person who walked away when life got hard, that was God removing distractions from your path. Every night you cried alone, wondering if anyone saw your pain, He was there, recording every tear, filing every hurt as evidence for the case he was building on your behalf. The courtroom of heaven has been in session, and the verdict just came in. Vindicated. You want to know why the enemy fought you so hard? Because hell has a copy of that scroll too. And when darkness saw your name written in fire, when it realized what you were carrying, it launched every weapon in its arsenal to stop you before you could step into your true identity. But here's what the enemy didn't count on. You don't break. You bend. You weep. You stumble. But you don't break. Because what's written in that scroll isn't just your name. It's your spiritual DNA. It's the code that makes you unbreakable, even when you feel most fragile. You didn't fight fire with fire. You transcended the battlefield entirely. The weapon they feared most wasn't your anger. It was your faithfulness. While others raged and retaliated, you did something that confused hell itself. You kept believing. You kept praying. You kept showing up to worship even when your heart was shattered. You kept extending mercy to people who didn't deserve it. You kept your hands clean when everyone around you was throwing mud. That wasn't weakness, chosen one. That was warfare at the highest level. Every act of forgiveness was a nuclear bomb in the spirit realm. Every prayer whispered through tears was a missile that hit targets you couldn't even see. Every morning you chose to get up and try again. That was you walking in the authority of someone whose name is written in that eternal scroll. The silence wasn't punishment. It was strategy. You wondered why God seemed quiet when you needed him most. Why the heavens felt like brass when you cried out for answers. But what you didn't know is that divine silence isn't absence. It's ammunition. While you waited in that quiet place, God was preparing a table for you in the presence of your enemies. He was setting up your vindication while your accusers were still celebrating what they thought was your defeat. You weren't hidden because you were forgotten. You were hidden because you were precious. Like a diamond buried deep in the earth. Pressure and darkness weren't destroying you. They were creating something priceless. Every betrayal added another facet to your character. Every loss carved out more capacity in your soul. Every season of loneliness taught you how to hear God's voice above the noise of human opinion. Now you emerge not bitter, but better. Not broken, but rebuilt. Not a victim, but a victor who learned how to win wars without firing a single shot. The scroll was written in blood, not ink, and your name just echoed through eternity. This isn't a message, it's a spiritual subpoena. You're being summoned, not to judgment, but to justice. Not to punishment, but to position. The same scroll that contains your name also contains your assignment, your authority, and your vindication. Everything that tried to destroy you is about to be used as evidence of your unshakable faith. The people who counted you out are about to witness a comeback they can't explain. The systems that rejected you are about to need what you carry. The voices that said you'd never amount to anything are about to be silenced by the sound of heaven's applause. But this vindication isn't for your ego. It's for your assignment. You're not being elevated so you can look down on others. You're being positioned so you can lift them up. The scroll doesn't just contain your name. It contains your orders. You are being commissioned as a carrier of hope to the hopeless. A voice of truth in a world drowning in lies. A living testimony that God still honors faithfulness, still rewards endurance, still keeps his promises even when everything looks impossible. Your story isn't ending, chosen one. Your story is just beginning. The scroll is open. Your name has been called. And what happens next will make the darkness tremble and the angels sing. This is your moment. This is your hour. This is your divine interruption. Step forward. The scroll is waiting. They thought isolation would crush you. It consecrated you. You've carried the weight of being different your entire life, haven't you? While others seem to glide through relationships effortlessly, you found yourself on the outside looking in. While they celebrated in crowds, You wrestled with God in silence. They called it loneliness. Heaven called it preparation. You weren't rejected because you were flawed. You were set apart because you were chosen. There's a difference between being overlooked and being off limits. One comes from human blindness. The other comes from divine protection. Before trauma ever touched your name, heaven had already sealed it. The ache in your chest wasn't emptiness. It was prophecy. Every birthday you spent alone, every invitation that never came, every room that went quiet when you walked in, you thought it meant something was wrong with you. But what if I told you it meant something was right about you? What if the very thing that made you feel broken was actually the evidence that you were being built for something unbreakable? You carried a frequency others couldn't match. Not because you were better, but because you were different. Marked, sealed, reserved for a purpose that required separation before it demanded manifestation. The enemy knew your assignment before you did. That's why the attacks came early. That's why rejection followed you like a shadow. Hell was trying to convince you that isolation was punishment when it was actually preservation. You weren't overlooked. You were off limits. Your tears weren't weakness. They were warfare. While others celebrated victories you never got to taste, while doors opened for them that remained locked for you, something holy was happening in the hidden places of your heart. Every tear that hit your pillow was a seed. Every night you cried yourself to sleep was a prayer you didn't know you were praying. Your pain had purpose. Your rejection had reason. You weren't suffering for nothing, you were suffering for someone. For the generations that would walk in freedom because you chose to walk in faithfulness. For the broken who would find healing because you refused to become bitter. The enemy wanted your tears to drown your destiny. Instead, they watered it. You didn't fight fire with fire. You transcended the battlefield. When they mocked your sensitivity, you could have hardened your heart. When they questioned your calling, you could have abandoned your post. When they made you feel invisible, you could have started performing for their approval. But you didn't. You chose something higher, something holier. You chose to keep your heart soft in a world that demanded toughness. You chose to remain faithful to a voice others couldn't hear. You chose to stay planted in soil that looked barren, trusting that what was being formed beneath the surface would one day break through with power. They fought you with flesh and blood. You fought back with faith and fire. You didn't need their validation because heaven had already vindicated you. You didn't need their approval because the Almighty had already appointed you. The mirror they held up to you was cracked. The one heaven holds is crystal clear. They saw your struggles and called you unstable. Heaven saw your wrestling and called you Israel. They saw your tears and labeled you weak. Heaven saw your tears and counted them precious. They looked at your broken pieces and declared you worthless. Heaven looked at your broken pieces and saw a mosaic of glory waiting to be revealed. You are not who they said you were. You never were. Their vision was limited by their own limitations. Their judgment was clouded by their own insecurities. But heaven's perspective is eternal. And from that vantage point, you were never anything less than magnificent. Even when you couldn't see it yourself, divine silence was your secret weapon. While others demanded immediate answers, you learned to trust in the quiet. While they needed constant confirmation, you found strength in the stillness. While they crumbled without applause, you discovered how to stand without an audience. Heaven's silence wasn't abandonment, it was training. God wasn't ignoring your cries, He was teaching you to hear His whisper above the world's noise. Every unanswered prayer was actually an answered prayer disguised as mystery. Every delayed breakthrough was actually perfect timing wrapped in patience. You learned to walk by faith when sight would have deceived you. You learned to trust the compass of your spirit when every external sign pointed to failure. You learned that sometimes the most powerful word God speaks is the one you feel rather than hear. You didn't fall through the cracks. You were hidden in the rock. The places that rejected you weren't your home. The people who couldn't see you weren't your tribe. The doors that stayed closed weren't your entrance. You were being shielded, protected, preserved for something that required more than talent. It required character that could only be forged in fire. Every closed door was heaven saying, "Not there, not yet, not them." Every rejection was divine redirection. Every season of hiddenness was sacred preparation for a revelation that would leave no room for doubt about whose hand had been guiding your steps all along. You weren't falling through cracks. You were being hidden in the cleft of the rock, covered by the hand of the Almighty until the time came for your unveiling. The mandate was written before your first breath, and hell knew it. This is why the warfare started early. This is why the confusion came before clarity. This is why resistance met you at every turn. The enemy wasn't reacting to who you were, he was responding to who you were becoming. He saw the scroll, he read the mandate. He knew that if you ever discovered the truth about your identity, his schemes would crumble. So he tried to bury your confidence beneath insecurity. He tried to drown your calling in confusion. He tried to silence your voice with shame. But what he didn't count on was the seal, the mark, the divine protection that no amount of warfare could wash away. You survived what should have destroyed you. You stood when everything said fall. You kept believing when logic demanded doubt. Not because you were stronger than the storm, but because you were sealed before the storm ever began. The mandate wasn't a suggestion, it was a declaration. And today, heaven is making sure you remember. Before trauma touched your name, heaven had already sealed it. Before rejection reached your heart, divine purpose had already claimed it. Before the world had a chance to define you, eternity had already designed you. You were marked before time, not as a mistake, but as a mandate. And that mandate is still in effect. They thought fear would break you. It backfired. You see, chosen one, what happened to you wasn't random. The depression that came out of nowhere, the betrayal that cut deeper than flesh, the doors that slammed shut just when breakthrough felt close, the isolation that wrapped around you like grave clothes. None of it was coincidence. Hell had your scent, not because you were perfect, not because you were holy, but because somewhere in the courts of eternity, your name was written in a book that made demons nervous. They smelled your scroll before you even knew you had one. You weren't attacked because you were weak. You were attacked because you were written. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. Think about it. Why did trauma find you so young? Why did depression hunt you through decades? Why did people you trusted turn into weapons aimed at your heart? Because hell has intelligence. And their intelligence told them something about you that you're only now discovering. You carry something they cannot duplicate, cannot purchase, cannot destroy. Your assignment was leaked in the spirit realm before your first breath. And the moment you drew air into your lungs, warfare began. Hell doesn't chase the average, it hunts the seal. They knew that one day you'd wake up. One day you'd remember. One day, you'd stop running from the fire in your bones and start running with it. And when that day came, their kingdom would lose territory. So they attacked early. They attacked often. They attacked everything. Your mind, your relationships, your dreams, your voice. But here's what they didn't calculate. You didn't break, you bent steel. Every arrow they shot became a stepping stone. The betrayal, it taught you discernment that can't be learned in Bible college. The depression, it carved out capacity for joy that shallow people will never know. The isolation, it forced you into conversations with God that became your greatest education. You thought you were surviving random chaos, but you were actually in boot camp for spiritual warfare. Hell wanted to bury you. Instead, they planted you. You didn't fight fire with fire, you transcended the battlefield. While they threw stones, you built altars. While they whispered lies, you hummed worship. While they orchestrated betrayal, you practiced forgiveness that made angels weep. You became dangerous not because you fought back, but because you fought forward. Every step you took toward light was a step away from their reach. Every prayer you whispered in the dark was a bomb detonating in their strategy rooms. The war was personal because your victory is generational. They could smell tomorrow on your skin. See, the enemy doesn't just attack individuals. He attacks bloodlines. And your bloodline was scheduled for a divine interruption. You were the appointed disruptor, the cycle breaker, the one who would stand up in your family tree and say, "This curse ends with me." They knew that if you ever discovered who you really are, entire family systems would shift. Generational patterns would shatter. Spiritual poverty would end. The silence that kept your people bound would be broken by your voice. You weren't just fighting for yourself. You were fighting for everyone who comes after you. That's why the warfare felt bigger than your body could contain. Because it was. You were carrying the liberation of your entire lineage on your shoulders. And hell knew it. But here's the scandal that makes demons tremble. Every attack they launched only made you stronger. Every lie they whispered only made your truth louder. Every door they slammed only made your breakthrough more inevitable. You didn't just survive the war. You absorbed its power. The mirror of truth reveals everything. Now you know why it was so intense. Why it felt personal. Why the attacks came in waves that didn't match your actions. You weren't being punished for your past. You were being prevented from your future. But prevention failed. Here you are, still breathing, still believing, still carrying that scroll they tried so desperately to keep sealed. And now that you know why they fought you so hard, you can walk differently. You don't move as a victim anymore. You move as someone hell fears. Not because you're perfect, not because you're powerful, but because you're persistent. Because every morning you wake up is another day their plan failed. Because every time you choose faith over fear, their kingdom loses ground. The war was personal because your calling is prophetic. And prophetic people don't just change their own lives. They change the atmosphere wherever they go. They shift bloodlines. They break curses. They speak things into existence that hell spent generations trying to keep buried. The enemy smelled your scroll, and it terrified him. But terror has an expiration date, and his time is up. You're not just walking out of warfare, chosen one. You're walking into warfare authority. The very battles that tried to destroy you have now equipped you to destroy strongholds. They thought they were hunting you, but you were being trained to hunt them. The scroll is open, your name is called, and hell's worst nightmare is walking upright. They tried to convince you that your voice didn't matter. They lied. You see, chosen one, there's something they never told you about the sealed ones. Something hell hoped you'd never discover. The very thing that made you feel different, isolated, misunderstood, that wasn't your weakness. That was your seal. You thought you were broken because you couldn't fake enthusiasm for shallow things. You thought something was wrong with you because small talk felt like torture and surface-level relationships left you empty. You wondered why you always felt like you were speaking a different language, even in rooms full of believers. But here's the truth that's about to shatter every lie. You weren't silenced. You were sealed. There's a difference between being muted and being preserved. And God preserved your voice for this hour. The silence wasn't rejection, it was your training ground. Your voice was never meant to echo in empty halls or chase after applause that fades before the sound dies. Your voice was forged in the furnace of isolation, refined in the crucible of misunderstanding, and sharpened in the secret place where only heaven could hear. They thought silence would diminish you. Instead, it deepened you. Every year you spent feeling voiceless was actually a year your voice was gaining weight. Every season you felt overlooked was a season your words were being loaded with authority. Every moment you thought you had nothing to say was a moment heaven was downloading revelations too heavy for premature release. You are not remembering who you are. You are remembering what the scroll already declared. This awakening you're experiencing, this stirring in your bones, this fire in your chest, this restlessness that won't let you settle for normal anymore. This isn't new. This is ancient. This is your spirit responding to a call that was issued before time began. Your name didn't just get added to the scroll. Your name was the reason the scroll was written. The hidden ones are awakening now, not by accident, but by appointment. You thought you were hidden because you were forgotten, but you were hidden because you were being prepared. There's a difference between being overlooked and being preserved. God doesn't hide what he's ashamed of. He conceals what is precious until the moment of revelation arrives. And that moment is now. You feel it stirring, don't you? That thing you've carried in secret for years, that burden, that vision, that fire that wouldn't die no matter how many people told you to be realistic. You thought it was just dreams, but it was downloads, direct transmissions from the throne room to your spirit. The seal on your life was never meant to keep you quiet. It was meant to keep you pure. While others were building platforms, you were building character. While they were chasing crowds, you were cultivating depth. While they were speaking to be heard, you were learning to hear the voice that matters most. And now when you speak, it won't be with the desperation of someone begging to be noticed. It will be with the authority of someone who has been commissioned. Your voice doesn't need volume, it needs validity. And validity comes from authenticity. And authenticity is forged in the hidden place. The awakening isn't loud, it's deep. You're not waking up to become someone new. You're waking up to step into who you've always been. The sealed ones don't discover their calling, they remember it. They don't learn their assignment, they recognize it. That pulling in your spirit, that knowing that you can't shake, that sense that time is short and something eternal is at stake, that's not anxiety, that's activation. You were sealed before the foundation of the world, but you're being awakened in the final hour. And when the hidden ones awaken, they don't just change their own lives. They alter the spiritual climate of entire regions. They don't just find their voice, they become the voice for those who've been silenced by shame, broken by betrayal, crushed by circumstances. Your awakening is not just personal, it's prophetic. The enemy fought so hard to keep you sleeping because he knew what would happen when you opened your eyes. He knew that one awakened chosen one could undo decades of his deception. He knew that your voice, once activated, would become a sound that penetrates the deepest darkness. You were never meant to whisper. You were meant to roar, not with anger, but with authority. Not with volume, but with anointing. Not with desperation, but with divine backing. The scroll is open. Your name is being read, and with every syllable, something in the spirit realm is shifting. Angels are taking positions. Assignments are being activated. Resources are being redirected. You are not just awakening to your calling. You are awakening your calling. The hidden ones are silent no more. You thought your season of waiting was wasted time, but it was preparation time. You thought your years in the wilderness were punishment, but they were your doctoral program in spiritual warfare. Now you emerge, not as a beginner, but as a graduate. Not as someone hoping to find their place, but as someone ready to take their position. Your voice was never buried, chosen one. It was planted. And what was planted in the secret place is about to bloom in the public square. The silence is breaking. The seal is opening. The hidden ones are stepping into the light. And when they do, the world will remember what authentic spiritual authority sounds like. You are sealed, not silenced, preserved, not forgotten, hidden, not abandoned. And your awakening has begun. The final book is open. Your name echoes in eternity, and heaven itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do with the voice that was never meant to stay quiet. The awakening isn't coming, chosen one. It's here. The silence just broke. You felt it, didn't you? That shift in the atmosphere, that sudden weight pressing against your chest, that tremor in your spirit that made you stop what you were doing and pay attention. That wasn't anxiety, chosen one. That was heaven opening its mouth. The Lamb has taken the scroll, the seal has been broken, and right now, at this very moment, your name is being read aloud in the courts of eternity. This is not a prophecy. This is a divine dispatch. When heaven calls your name, everything else must bow. Listen. Can you hear it? The sound isn't coming through your ears. It's resonating in your bones. Your spirit is standing at attention because it recognizes the voice that spoke you into existence. The same voice that called light out of darkness is now calling your name out of silence. And when God speaks a name, realms respond. The angels have stopped their worship to listen. The demons have ceased their scheming to tremble. Creation itself has paused because heaven just announced that one of the sealed is being summoned into active duty. You didn't apply for this position. You were appointed to it. This isn't about your qualifications. This is about your consecration. Heaven doesn't call the equipped. It equips the called. And you, beloved, have been called by name from the foundation of the world. Every struggle you survived was preparing you for this summons. Every betrayal that tried to silence you was actually sharpening your voice for this moment. Every night you cried alone was actually a conversation with the one who knew this day would come. You weren't being abandoned. You were being prepared. The roll call has begun, and your name just echoed through dimensions unseen. When God calls a name, time bends. You've been wondering why certain things in your life suddenly feel urgent, why you can't shake the feeling that something monumental is shifting, why your prayers feel different, heavier, more electric, why worship now moves you to tears you can't explain. It's because your spiritual DNA is responding to heaven's frequency. Your name just activated something in the unseen realm, and your soul knows it. This isn't a general invitation sent to the masses. This is a specific summons delivered to the sealed. The crowd will scroll past this message. But you stopped. You listened. You felt something stir deep in your chest. That's because this call was never meant for everyone. It was meant for you. Your name didn't just get read, it got released. Released from the waiting room of preparation into the battlefield of purpose. Released from the silence of hiddenness into the sound of holy assignment. And when heaven releases a name, hell loses sleep. The warfare you've been experiencing isn't random. It's reactive. The moment your name was called in the spirit realm, every demonic strategy against your bloodline went into overdrive. They knew their time was running short, but their panic is your proof. They don't fight for what they're not afraid to lose. You are what they're afraid to lose. This summons comes with backup you've never experienced before. Angels that have been waiting in the wings are now taking position around your steps. Favor that's been stored up for generations is now being released into your timeline. Resources that seemed impossible are now aligning with divine precision. You're not walking into your assignment alone. You're walking with a heavenly entourage. When your name was called, it wasn't whispered. It was declared. Declared with the authority that created galaxies. Declared with the power that resurrects the dead. Declared with the love that chose you before you ever chose him. And declarations from the throne room don't fade. They echo until they manifest. The sound of your name is still reverberating through the corridors of heaven, still causing tremors in the foundations of hell, still activating divine protocols that have been dormant for decades. Your summons isn't just personal, it's prophetic. Your yes to this call will shift more than your own life. It will alter the spiritual landscape of your family, your city, your generation. This is the moment your ancestors prayed for. This is the hour your bloodline has been waiting for. This is the divine appointment that hell tried to prevent, but heaven has protected. The roll call has reached your name, And your response will determine not just your destiny, but the destinies of those connected to your obedience. Heaven is not asking if you're ready. Heaven is declaring that you are chosen. The question isn't whether you feel qualified. The question is whether you'll answer when your name is called. And chosen one, your name is being called right now. Can you hear it? Will you answer? The throne room is waiting for your response. The furnace didn't destroy you. It crowned you. You thought the pain was punishment. You believed the silence meant abandonment. You whispered into empty rooms, "God, why me?" But what you didn't see was heaven's workshop. What felt like breaking was actually making. Every tear that fell in secret was liquid gold being poured into the mold of your destiny. Every night you couldn't sleep. Angels were standing guard over something too precious to leave unprotected. Every betrayal that cut to the bone was actually heaven's chisel, carving away everything that wasn't you. The fire didn't burn you. It branded you. You survived what others didn't because your scroll required a different kind of strength. Not the kind that comes from comfort, the kind that comes from crushing. They told you to pray for easier paths, but heaven was building you for impossible roads. Look at your hands now. They've been through the flame, and they don't tremble anymore. They've carried weight that would have buried weaker vessels. They've wiped tears that would have drowned shallower souls. Those hands aren't just hands anymore. They're tools, weapons, instruments of divine purpose. The oil you carry didn't come from ease. It came from crushing. You thought the seasons of pressure were accidents, random moments of bad luck. But there's nothing random about the way olives become oil. Nothing coincidental about the way diamonds are formed. You were being processed. Every relationship that ended without explanation was heaven removing what couldn't handle your fire. Every door that slammed shut was God protecting you from platforms that would have consumed your anointing before it was ready. Every season of silence was your spirit being seasoned in the secret place. You didn't just endure the furnace, you absorbed its power. The depression that tried to swallow you whole, it taught you how to find light in the deepest darkness. The betrayal that nearly broke your trust in humanity, it gave you discernment that can spot deception from miles away. The isolation that felt like exile, it was actually initiation into a fellowship of suffering that few are invited to join. You became dangerous in the fire, not because you learned to fight, but because you learned to stand. Still, steady, unshakable. The seal on your life wasn't stamped in a moment of victory. It was forged through years of faithfulness when victory seemed impossible. They see your strength now and think you were born this way. They don't know about the nights you cried yourself to sleep. They don't know about the mornings you had to talk yourself into getting out of bed. They don't know about the prayers you prayed when you had no words left. But heaven knows. Heaven remembers every second. You didn't choose the fire, but you chose to stay in it when escape was offered. You chose to worship when your throat was raw from crying. You chose to forgive when revenge would have felt better. You chose to believe when doubt had every reason to win. That's why the seal is unbreakable. Not because you were perfect, but because you were persistent. Not because you never fell, but because you always got back up. Not because the fire didn't touch you, but because it couldn't consume what God had already claimed. You are not accident. You are not coincidence. You are proof that when heaven puts its mark on something, hell can throw everything it has at it and still fail. The seal was not given because you deserved it. The seal was confirmed because you survived it. Every scar tells a story of victory. Every limp is evidence of a battle won. Every quiet moment when your eyes seem far away is you remembering wars fought in dimensions others can't see. You are marked now, branded, sealed, not with ink that can fade, but with fire that burns eternal. The furnace is behind you, but the power it forged remains. You don't just carry anointing anymore. You are anointing, walking, breathing, living proof that what doesn't kill the chosen makes them dangerous. The oil flows from crushed places. The light shines from broken vessels. The power comes from empty tombs. You thought you were dying in that fire, but you were being born. And what emerged from those flames wasn't the same person who went in. What emerged was someone hell fears and heaven celebrates. Someone who doesn't just survive storms but commands them to be still. The seal was forged in fire. It cannot be duplicated. It cannot be counterfeited. It cannot be removed. You wear it now like invisible armor, and every step you take leaves burning footprints that light the way for others still trapped in their own furnaces. The fire didn't destroy you. It revealed you, and what it revealed was magnificent. The crowd has thinned, and that was always the plan. You see, chosen one, there comes a moment in every sealed life when the path narrows, when the road that once seemed wide enough for many suddenly becomes a passage for few. This isn't cruelty. This is consecration. You've reached the gate of the sealed, and it doesn't open for everyone. Look around you. Notice how quiet it's become, how the noise of the masses has faded to a whisper, how the voices that once competed for your attention have grown strangely silent. This isn't abandonment. This is arrival. You've been walking toward this gate your entire life, and you didn't even know it. This gate doesn't open for charisma. It opens for consecration. The gate recognizes something that crowds cannot see, something that popularity cannot measure, something that social media cannot quantify. It recognizes the seal, the invisible mark, the holy branding that was placed on your spirit long before you understood what it meant. Many saw you coming and assumed you were like them. They thought your journey would follow their pattern. They expected you to settle where they settled, to be satisfied where they found satisfaction. But something in you kept moving. Something in you refused to stop at their stations. That something was the seal calling you forward. You were never meant to camp where others built their kingdoms. The gate stands before you now, ancient and unmovable. It doesn't respond to volume. It doesn't bow to credentials. It doesn't care about your resume or your reputation. It only asks one question. Do you carry the seal? And you do. You've always carried it. Even when you didn't understand its weight. Even when others couldn't see its glow. Even when you doubted its authenticity. The seal was there, burning quietly in your chest, waiting for this moment when gate and seal would finally meet. This isn't about status, it's about spiritual DNA. You didn't earn this access. You were born with it, chosen before your first breath, marked before your first step, set apart before you knew what separation meant. The gate has been waiting for you specifically, not someone like you. You. Every delay in your journey wasn't a detour, it was preparation. Every closed door wasn't rejection, it was redirection toward this gate. Every person who walked away wasn't abandonment, it was alignment, making sure you arrived here alone, unencumbered, carrying only what matters. Only the oil, only the fire, only the seal. The unsealed cannot pass. They cannot even see what you see. To them, this looks like emptiness, like isolation, like the end of the road. But to the sealed, this is recognition. This is homecoming. This is the moment when everything that felt like loss reveals itself as preparation for gain. You're not losing community. You're finding communion, not with the crowd, but with the consecrated, not with the loud, but with the sealed. The gate doesn't ask if you're ready. It asks if you're real. And the seal on your life has already answered that question. You are real, authentic, uncompromising. You refuse to fake what you didn't feel. You refuse to perform what you didn't possess. You refuse to claim what you hadn't carried. That refusal brought you here, to this gate, to this moment, to this crossing. Many are called, but few are sealed, and only the sealed can enter. The gate is not cruel. It's careful. What lies beyond cannot be entrusted to the casual, cannot be given to the uncommitted, cannot be placed in hands that haven't been tested by fire. You've been tested. You've been proven. You've been refined. Now you stand before the gate of the sealed, and it recognizes its own. You feel it, don't you? That stirring in your spirit, that holy trembling, that sense that you're standing on ground more sacred than any cathedral. This isn't fear. This is reverence. This is the seal responding to its destiny. The gate is opening, not with fanfare, not with announcement, but with quiet authority, with divine precision, with eternal intention. Step forward, chosen one, not because you're perfect, not because you're powerful, but because you're sealed. Only the sealed can enter. And you are one of them. The gate knows your name. It's been waiting for your arrival. And now, finally, after all the years of wandering, all the seasons of wondering, all the nights of weeping, you're home. Cross the threshold, leave the crowd behind. The sealed ones are waiting on the other side, and they've been expecting you. You stopped reading prophecy the day you became it. Chosen one, there's something happening when you walk into rooms now. Something you can't quite name, but everyone feels. The air shifts. Conversations pause. Even those who don't know your story sense that something ancient just entered their space. That's not coincidence. That's not charisma. That's the scroll manifesting in flesh and blood. You don't just read prophecy. You are prophecy walking upright. The words that were written about you before time began are no longer dormant ink on heavenly pages. They're breathing through your lungs. They're moving through your steps. They're speaking through your silence. You've become a living fulfillment of what was promised. Your footsteps don't just touch ground. They touch destiny. Every place you've walked in obedience has become holy ground. Not because you made it sacred, but because the scroll you carry sanctifies whatever it touches. The coffee shop where you prayed instead of complained. The hospital room where you worshiped instead of worried. The broken relationship where you blessed instead of cursed. You left something there, something eternal. You didn't just visit those places. You activated them. The scroll doesn't just contain prophecies about nations and kings. It contains prophecies about grocery stores and office buildings and family dinners where chosen ones would sit and shift the atmosphere with their presence alone. You carry the kind of light that doesn't announce itself. It just disrupts darkness. People don't always know why they feel different around you. They can't explain why your voice cuts through their confusion or why your peace unsettles their chaos. But their spirits know. They recognize the frequency of heaven, even when their minds can't process it. You've become a walking miracle that doesn't need a stage. Your yes is waking up generations that forgot who they were. Think about it. How many times have you spoken life into someone who was planning to give up? How many times has your presence in a room caused breakthrough for people you didn't even know were battling? How many bloodlines have been quietly redirected because you chose obedience over comfort? You're not just changing your own story, you're rewriting family histories. Every time you forgive instead of harbor bitterness, you break chains that were choking your children's children. Every time you choose faith over fear, you create pathways of possibility for people whose names you'll never know. Every time you worship in the wilderness, you're calling forth rain over regions that have been in drought for decades. The scroll doesn't work in isolation, it works in activation. And you, chosen one, are the activation key for sleeping destinies. You speak and dead dreams resurrect. You pray and barren wombs conceive vision. You walk in truth, and counterfeit kingdoms crumble. Nations don't just mean countries with borders. Nations mean tribes of people bound by lies, trapped in cycles, convinced that change is impossible. But impossibility doesn't survive in your atmosphere. You carry the frequency of suddenly, the vibration of nevertheless, the sound of, watch this, when heaven needs a demonstration of power on earth, it doesn't always send angels. Sometimes it sends a grandparent who learned how to worship in the storm. Sometimes it sends a widow who discovered that her voice carries more authority than armies. Sometimes it sends someone who looks ordinary but moves like lightning disguised as love. Sometimes it sends you. Your obedience activates nations because your obedience activates the scroll. And the scroll is not a small book. It's the blueprint for global awakening. Every page that manifests through your life releases permission for others to remember their own pages. Every prophecy that walks upright through your story gives courage to prophecies still sleeping in other hearts. You're not just walking out your own destiny. You're modeling what awakened looks like. The depression that tried to silence you, others are watching you praise through it and learning that sorrow is not their final word. The betrayal that aimed to isolate you, others are seeing you love anyway and discovering that trust can be rebuilt on higher ground. The delay that attempted to discourage you, others are witnessing your patience and realizing that divine timing is worth the wait. You've become the evidence that God still moves. You didn't plan this. You didn't campaign for it. You simply said yes in the dark, and light erupted from your agreement. Now, when you enter a space, the scroll enters with you. When you speak truth, prophecy speaks through you. When you choose love, nations feel the tremor. Your seal awakens legacies because your seal is connected to the eternal scroll. And the scroll, chosen one, was never meant to stay closed. It was meant to walk the earth in vessels who learned that ordinary obedience creates extraordinary breakthrough. You are that vessel. You are that breakthrough. You are prophecy walking upright, awakening everything you touch. The louder hell screamed. The clearer heaven's voice became. You thought the warfare was evidence of weakness. You carried shame about the battles, wondering why your life felt like a constant storm while others seemed to sail in calm waters. You asked God why the attacks were so relentless, why the pressure never seemed to lift. But you were asking the wrong question. The question isn't why the war came. The question is why hell invested so much ammunition in stopping you. You don't wage war against the powerless. You wage war against the dangerous. The war didn't come because you were weak. It came because you're unstoppable. Hell doesn't waste resources on small threats. It doesn't deploy legions against the insignificant. It doesn't orchestrate decades-long campaigns against the ordinary. But you had hell working overtime. Every demon assigned to your destruction was a testimony to your destiny. Every attack on your mind was confirmation of the thoughts you'd one day think. Every assault on your voice was evidence of the words you'd one day speak. They weren't fighting who you were. They were fighting who you were becoming. The size of your battle confirms the size of your mantle. When heaven writes a name in the scroll, hell takes notice. Not because of what that person has done, but because of what they will do. Your warfare began before your awakening because your assignment was already active in the spirit realm. You carried weight before you knew what weight was. The enemy could sense it on you like a scent. That indefinable something that made you different. That made you restless in comfortable places. That made you question what others accepted. That made you hunger for more when everyone else was satisfied with less. You thought you were difficult. You were actually dangerous. Every time they tried to break your spirit, they only proved how unbreakable it was. Every time they attempted to silence your voice, they only demonstrated how powerful it would become. Every door they slammed shut was evidence of the authority you'd one day carry to kick them back open. The attack was never against your past. It was always about your future. Hell saw tomorrow written on your forehead. They saw the bloodlines you'd liberate, the systems you'd expose, the strongholds you'd demolish. They saw the words you'd speak that would wake the sleeping and raise the dead. So they struck first. But here's what they miscalculated. Every blow they landed only added layers to your armor. Every lie they whispered only sharpened your discernment. Every betrayal they orchestrated only deepened your capacity for authentic love. You didn't just survive their attacks. You digested them and turned them into weapons. The depression taught you compassion for the brokenhearted. The rejection taught you how to stand alone with integrity. The financial pressure taught you that security doesn't come from banks, it comes from the one who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Hell wanted to destroy you. Instead, they trained you. You became a walking contradiction to their kingdom, living proof that darkness cannot extinguish light, evidence that what God builds, man cannot tear down, a testimony that the called don't just endure, they overcome. Your scars became your credentials. Now when you walk into rooms, the atmosphere shifts, not because you're perfect, but because you're proven. You've been through hell and came back carrying fire. You've wrestled with demons and walk away with their surrender. People sense something different about you. They can't name it, but they feel it. It's authority. The kind that can't be taught in seminaries or earned through degrees. The kind that only comes from having your faith refined in furnaces that would have melted lesser souls. You move differently now, speak differently. Even your silence carries weight, because you've learned the secret that hell desperately tried to keep from you. The intensity of the battle was never about punishment. It was about preparation. You weren't being destroyed. You were being forged. And now, as you step into the fullness of who you were always meant to be, hell realizes their greatest mistake. Every arrow they shot, every trap they set, every storm they sent, it all backfired. They thought they were hunting you, but they were creating you. You don't just carry victory now. You carry the proof that God keeps his promises, even when hell raises all of its forces to prevent them. The war over you confirms the weight in you, and that weight is about to shift kingdoms. You're not a survivor of spiritual warfare. You're a graduate of it, and graduation day has arrived. Beloved chosen one, as we come to the close of this divine encounter, let me remind you of the truths that heaven has spoken over your life tonight. You are not a mistake. You are not forgotten. You are not behind schedule. The warfare you've endured was not evidence of God's absence, it was proof of your assignment. Your name is written in the scroll, sealed in blood, and confirmed by the very battles that tried to erase it. Remember this: the enemy doesn't attack empty houses. Hell doesn't waste ammunition on powerless targets. The intensity of your warfare has always been confirmation of the weight you carry. Every tear you've cried in secret, every prayer you've whispered in the dark, every moment you chose to keep believing when everything said to quite a love it, has been building toward this moment of recognition. You are not walking this path alone. Right now, across this nation and around the world, there are others just like you, sealed ones, who felt the same isolation, fought the same battles, and carried the same holy fire in their bones. We are a family scattered by geography but united by the scroll. We are your prayer warriors, your encouragers, your witnesses that what God begins, He completes. This community exists for you. When you comment below, when you share your heart, when you ask for prayer, you're not reaching into a void. You're reaching into a network of believers who understand the weight you carry because they carry it too. We see you. We believe for you. We stand with you. But tonight, I want to ask you this question. Now that you know who you are, now that you've seen your name in the scroll, what will you do with this revelation? Will you shrink back into hiding, or will you step forward into your calling? Will you let the memory of past battles keep you bound, or will you let them become the foundation for future victories? The choice is yours, beloved. But know this: heaven is cheering you on, and hell is trembling at the sound of your yes. Let us pray together now. If you're able, place your hand on your heart as we invite the presence of the Almighty to settle over your life. Father God, In the name of Jesus, I lift up every precious soul who has heard this word tonight. You know them by nomino, just the names their mothers gave them, but the names written in glory before time began. Lord, they have walked through fire and emerged as gold. They have been pressed but not crushed, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. Tonight, let them feel your hand upon their shoulder. Let them sense your breath in their lungs. Let them know with unshakable certainty that they are loved, chosen, and called. Open doors that no man can shut. Heal wounds that have lingered too long. Restore relationships that have been severed by misunderstanding. Provide resources that have been withheld. Speak peace to the storms that have raged too long in their minds and hearts. Give them divine connections, people who will recognize their oil and honor their calling. Surround them with those who will pray with them, stand with them, and celebrate what you're about to do through them. Break every chain of fear, doubt, and delay. Silence every voice that speaks contrary to your word over their lives. Let this be the night that marks the end of their wilderness and the beginning of their promise. And Lord, as they step into this new chapter, don't let them walk alone. Connect them to this community of believers. Help them to be vulnerable enough to share their struggles and bold enough to celebrate their victories. In Jesus' mighty name we declare, the scroll is open, the names are called, and your people are rising. Amen. Family, I want you to do something powerful right now. In the comments below, simply type, "My name is written." Let that be your declaration of faith, your agreement with heaven, your public testimony that you believe what God has spoken over your life tonight. And if this message has stirred something in your spirit, if you've felt the fire rekindled, if you've sensed the call awakening, please share this video. There's someone in your circle, someone on your timeline, someone in your family who needs to know they're not crazy, they're called. They need to hear that their battles weren't random, they were prophetic. They need to know their name is in the scroll too. Your share could be the divine interruption that changes someone's life forever. Finally, if this content has become a well of encouragement for your soul, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. This isn't just about growing a platform, it's about building a family. When you subscribe, you're saying, I want to stay connected to this community, to this flow of prophetic insight, to this reminder that I am not alone. Thank you for taking this journey with me tonight. Thank you for staying until the end, for opening your heart to receive, for allowing heaven to speak to the depths of your spirit. You didn't stumble here by accident. You were drawn here by design. Go now in peace, beloved chosen one. Walk in the authority of your calling. Rest in the assurance of your seal. And remember, your story is still being written, and the best chapters are yet to come. The scroll is open. Your name has been called, and all of heaven is watching what you do next. Grace and peace be with you. Until we meet again in this sacred space, keep burning bright.